bill be considered by the Education and Science Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. Call on Government Order of the Day number 2.
Minimum Wage Starting Out Wage Amendment Bill, first reading.
The Honourable Tony Ryall.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Minimum Wage Starting Out Wage Amendment Bill be now read a first time. Mr Speaker, I nominate the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee to consider the bill, and at the appropriate time I will move that the Transport and Industrial Relations Committee report to the House on the Minimum Wage Starting Out Wage Amendment Bill by February 28, 2013. Mr Speaker, nothing can be more sapping for the spirit of a young New Zealander to be on welfare at such an early part of their life. And everything that governments can do to assist those people to get into meaningful work is important, and that is why this government is bringing in this piece of legislation in order to assist those young people. Mr Speaker, what's quite clear, this is intended to assist 3 groups of people through the starting out wage. They're 16 and 17-year-olds in their first 6 months of work with a new employer, 18 and 19-year-olds who have been paid a benefit for 6 months or longer and who have not yet completed 6 months of continuous work with any employer, and 16 to 19-year-olds in training in a recognised industry training course involving at least 40 credits a year. The starting out wage is voluntary and it must be agreed to by both the employer and the employee. Mr Speaker, as I said, we want to help young New Zealanders get their foot on the first rung of the job ladder. And we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to get that job. Now, this was recognised by the previous government, who introduced a proposal when they were in government which would see people paid the same amount as they will get on the starting out wage, but it was called something else, and it was only limited roughly to about 3 months. So we're extending this to 6 months, and we're making it apply across a wider group of these younger people. So there's nothing mystical or magical about the starting out wage. Nothing mystical about it, nothing magical about it, nothing mean about it, because it is the rate that Labor put in place when they were in government in 2008. But we want to make sure that that starting out wage is there to support young people who are new to the workforce so that they can get into long-term sustainable employment. And we want to give them an opportunity to take advantage of the labour market, to gain the necessary skills and work experience to assist them throughout their working lives. And indeed, this is what Mrs Dyson and Mrs Fenton said when they spoke in 2007-8, when the previous government introduced its equivalent of this legislation. What they said was that there was a good argument to recognise that for many young people, the first few months of their employment were a training period where they were learning skills, getting experience and providing skills so they could add value to business in terms of their long-term sustainable employment. And they thought it was right that young people be given that opportunity. And that's what we're proposing in this legislation, to give them their first foot on the rung of the job ladder. And so this will limits this period for an employer who can use the starting out wage to a young person who works for them for a period of 6 months, unless they're training or supervising others. And after this time, the young person's entitled to be paid at the adult rate by that employer. The starting out wage also addresses the issue for many young people who've been on a benefit and who face difficulty re-entering or gaining a foothold in the workforce ladder. Now, what we know is that the longer someone stays on welfare, the harder it is to get into work, and as Dr. Calder would say, the worse it is for their health. What we know is that the longer people are on welfare, the worse it is for their health. In fact, Dame Carol Black would say that being on welfare is equivalent to smoking a significant number of cigarettes every day. It has the same impact on your health. And if we can provide every opportunity for young people to get into work, it's good for them, for their future prospects, but also for their health. So the starting out wage provides an incentive for employers to take these young people on, and for those who've been out of the workforce for a while, they may lack skills and experience, and this provides an opportunity for them in order to get what is necessary. As the Minister said in her press statement, the government recognises there is also a need to provide more vocational training opportunities for 16 to 19-year-olds. It's important that these young people are able to engage in training for industry, and employers so far have indicated that they're not using the minimum training wage. And so this bill changes the status quo by providing for young people between 16 and 19 and unemployed under contracts of service that require them to undergo training to a minimum starting rate rather than the minimum training wage. So we've reduced the number of training credits from 60 to 40 to 16 to 19-year-olds to give them the flexibility to choose a range of courses without having such a heavy load. So, Mr. Speaker, I think that the response to this has been really quite remarkable. Large numbers of employers around the country have said that this makes a lot of sense. I think there's been pretty muted response from the union movement, really. I think they know that the previous government brought something in on this, so that at the same rate for a large number of young people. We're extending that to a wider group. The rate's the same. After 6 months, they move on to the minimum wage that is currently legislated. But what's so important here is that we give these young people a chance and an opportunity. So when they go and apply for jobs, they are able to discuss their eligibility for this support with the employer. The employer can take that into consideration when they make their employment decision. But people must know that these young people are being supported by the Parliament to get their foot on the first rung of the employment ladder. So just under 25,000 people, young people, have already benefited from subsidised work placements and pre-employment training. The government's plan is working. There are around about 60,000 more jobs in the economy today than where we were a little while ago. And despite the uncertainty of so many parts of the world, the latest GDP figures show that New Zealand grew by 1.6% in the last 6 months. That's very, very significant. Economic growth is forecast to increase to 2 to 3%, and that is what drives real jobs in the New Zealand economy. Getting the private sector up and running creates the wealth and the jobs and the economic growth that creates more jobs and economic growth for New Zealanders. And this government's taken a number of important steps under the leadership and auspices of the Minister of Labour, Kate Wilkinson. The 90-day trial period for new employees is deemed to create around about 13,000 new jobs. The lower company tax rate, really competitive with Australia at 28 cents. Hundreds of millions of dollars put back in the economy through lower ACC levies. Hundreds of millions of dollars saved by removing 170 unnecessary red tape compliance measures. We've got one of the lowest inflation rates we've had since 1999. Interest rates are at their lowest level in 45 years. This government is putting the platform in place that provides the incentive and the encouragement for business to invest and grow jobs and create wealth in New Zealand. And the people who are benefiting from that investment will be the young New Zealanders who get increased opportunities under this change that's being provided by this government. If we promise to do it in the election, we've got a mandate to do this. We've got a mandate from New Zealanders to do this because it helps put the incentives in the right place to give business the confidence to grow, to invest in their workforces and to compete in the world economy. Mr. Speaker, I'm very pleased to be able to move this bill on behalf of the Minister, Kate Wilkinson, who works tirelessly with our other ministers to create opportunities for New Zealanders, and this is a big opportunity for young New Zealanders to get their foot on that first rung of the job ladder to independence and a better life that we would want for all of them.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Darian Fenton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I rise on behalf of the Labour Party to strongly oppose this minimum wage